Your sentencing, so you have an opportunity to speak to the court. Would you like to speak? What would you like to say?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's very unfortunate that two families are here today. What I do want to say is there have been situations that I've been in that I have walked away from due to violence. I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't raised in a household with a guy putting their hands on a woman. So there was a lot of times where I had to walk away from a situation other than being left from a situation. So I do regret, and I do think about it every day, that I wasn't able to help him, that I wasn't able to call the police because I panicked. I walked away from a situation that was very, 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 it was just a lot. It was a lot for me to deal with, and I truly.
He was last seen in October. After that, nothing. No calls, no texts, no trace. Days turned into weeks, and still nobody came forward to say they had seen him. Nobody filed a report. The silence just kept growing. When police finally walked into the apartment he had shared with his girlfriend, they weren't prepared for what they found. The place had been stripped. Furniture gone. Personal belongings gone. It looked like someone had tried very hard to erase the fact that anyone had ever lived there. But they couldn't erase everything, because right there on the floor was blood. Months later, 7 months to be exact, two people out kayaking on a river made a terrible discovery. A body, bound with rope, wrapped in a bedsheet, left in the water like it was something to be thrown away. And slowly, painfully, investigators began to piece together what had happened. Phone records, search histories, DNA, a trail of evidence that someone thought they had buried but hadn't. This is the story of Marcus Webb and what happened inside that apartment. It is a story about love gone wrong, about choices made in the worst moments, and about the truth that always finds its way to the surface. Before we talk about how he died, let's talk about who he was. Marcus Webb was 32 years old. He lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, a mid-sized city on the Ohio River, the kind of place where people know their neighbors and life moves at a steady, ordinary pace. Marcus was part of that ordinary life. He had family who loved him. He checked in with them regularly. Phone calls, messages, he was consistent. His family knew his patterns. They knew when something was off. And when the messages stopped, they noticed immediately. Marcus had been in a relationship with a woman named Simone Carter. It wasn't a smooth relationship. Anyone who knew them would tell you that. There were arguments, separations, moments where it seemed like it was finally over between them, and then they would find their way back to each other. That push and pull, that cycle of breaking up and getting back together, it defined a lot of their time together. Despite all of that, they shared an apartment. Their life was tangled up together in that way that sometimes happens, even when two people probably shouldn't be living under the same roof. Marcus had no plans to disappear. Nothing in his behavior suggested he was going somewhere. He wasn't packing up his life. He wasn't saying goodbyes. He was just living. And then one day in October, all of that stopped. The last time anyone confirmed seeing Marcus Webb alive was October 18th. His final message to someone he cared about came through the following day, October 19th. After that, the phone went quiet, and it never came back on. Here's something that still sits heavy when you think about this case. After Marcus stopped reaching out, after October 19th, nobody reported him missing for almost 3 weeks. 3 weeks. His family felt something was wrong. You always feel it when someone who calls you every few days suddenly goes completely quiet. But sometimes you tell yourself, maybe he's busy. Maybe things are rough with the girlfriend. Maybe he just needs space. You wait a little longer before you make it official. On November 8, 2024, Marcus Webb's family finally filed a missing persons report. Police went to the apartment. When they knocked, no one answered. When they got inside, what they found changed the entire direction of the investigation. The apartment was almost empty. Not the kind of empty that happens when someone moves out over time, the kind of empty that happens fast. Like someone had come through and taken everything that mattered. Whatever life had existed inside those walls had been cleared out. But not everything. There was blood on the floor.
Not a small amount.
Not something you could explain away. Enough that forensic testing later confirmed it. That blood belonged to Marcus Webb. And Simone Carter? She was no longer there. She had already moved on to a new address. Hadn't told police. Hadn't filed anything.
Just gone.
That blood changed everything. What began as a missing persons case was now something much darker. Investigators weren't looking for a man who had walked away from his life. They were looking for answers to what had happened inside that apartment. A crime scene had been discovered. A victim had been identified through DNA. Now investigators needed to find out the rest. Time passed. Weeks became months. And still, no sign of Marcus Webb. Then, on May 15, 2025, two kayakers were out on the Great Miami River in southwestern Ohio. It was supposed to be an ordinary day on the water. It wasn't. What they found floating near the riverbank would confirm everyone's worst fears. A body, bound with rope, wrapped in a bedsheet, badly decomposed from months in the water. Authorities recovered the remains and began the process of identification.
It took time.
The condition of the body made it difficult. But eventually, through DNA testing, it was confirmed the remains belonged to Marcus Webb. He had been dead since October. 7 months in that river, hidden, wrapped up, left to be forgotten. But let's take a moment here, because this matters. The way the body was found told investigators a great deal. The rope, the bedsheet. These weren't random. This wasn't someone who died somewhere and happened to end up in the water. Someone had wrapped him up. Someone had bound him. Someone had carried him to that river and put him in. This was deliberate. And those bedsheets, investigators would later match them to materials from the apartment. The same apartment where Marcus's blood had been found. The same apartment where the furniture had been cleared out. Everything was beginning to connect. Now here's where the story takes a turn that I think says something important about the world we live in now. Investigators didn't just rely on physical evidence. They followed the digital trail too. And what they found was chilling. In the days after Marcus died, after October 18th, there was internet activity connected to Simone Carter. Searches. The kind of searches that no innocent person would have reason to make. Searches about what happens to the body after a stabbing. Searches about survival odds. Searches that painted a very clear picture of someone who had been present while another person was dying and was trying to understand, or maybe reassure themselves about what was happening. There were also phone records, messages. Court documents would later reference one message in particular, sent after the body had been discovered in the river, that referenced disappearance in a way prosecutors used to show awareness. Awareness of what had happened. Awareness of what had been done. And then there was the DNA. Marcus's blood in the apartment. And blood found on clothing at Simone's new residence. Blood that connected her directly to the evidence already found. On July 21, 2025, police went to Simone Carter's new home to make the arrest. When they arrived, she was living with a man named Derek Powell, 41. A firearm was found in the home. Both of them were legally prohibited from having weapons. Derek Powell was charged separately for the weapons violation. Simone Carter was taken into custody. The charges against her were serious: 2 counts of murder, felonious assault, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, and a weapons charge. A grand jury had reviewed the evidence and agreed there was enough to move forward. This is where we reach the end of the road, and it is not a satisfying ending. No ending to a story like this ever really is. When the case finally reached the courtroom, Simone Carter entered a plea agreement. The original murder charges were reduced. She pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter, felonious assault, and abuse of a corpse. And in that courtroom, she admitted what had happened. On October 18, 2024, during an argument, she stabbed Marcus Webb in the abdomen. She did not call for help. She did not call 911. She did not reach out to anyone who could have saved him. Instead, she went online and searched about whether someone could survive a stabbing. And she stayed in that apartment while he died. After he was gone, she reached out to others for help disposing of the body. Marcus was wrapped in a bedsheet, bound with rope, transported to the river and left there. For 7 months, his family didn't know where he was. They didn't know he was gone. They were living in that terrible space between hope and fear, and all along, someone knew exactly what had happened to him and said nothing. In March 2026, the court handed down its sentence. Simone Carter would serve a minimum of 19.7 years and a maximum of 25.2 years in prison. Marcus Webb's family has their answers now. But answers don't bring someone back. What this case leaves behind is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, even when someone believes they have covered every trace, the truth has a way of finding its way out. A bloodstain on a floor, a bedsheet in a river, a search history on a phone. The evidence waits, and eventually it speaks. Rest in peace, Marcus Webb.